Hi, everybody. My name is Zach Wurtzel, and I am the Career Development Specialist at the Rockwell Career Center for undergraduate marketing, non-specialty accounting programs, and entrepreneurship. We have a great young professional panels here today for our Recruiters Get Real webinar series. The entire webinar for the next hour is going to be totally based on questions from our participants. So I'm going to have them each introduce themselves first, and then we'll jump into questions.
Hi guys, my name is Serena. I am the current Target Galveston Human Resources. So I work down in the Galveston store and I oversee all human resources in our building. We have about 115 employees here, and I spend a good portion of my day doing interviews and connecting with people on LinkedIn and telling them all about really great opportunities with Target. I graduated from UH last May, and I'm just really excited to spend some time with you guys today.
I'm Ryan McLean. I'm a current middle market banking and specialized industries commercial banking analyst, long title, at JPMorgan Chase. I graduated from UH this past December 2019, and I've interned with Chase the past 2 summers before that. So a lot of experience with the banking industry, a lot of experience with Chase. And then pretty big impact from COVID on my job. So happy to answer any questions around that.
My name is Sahel Madani. I'm an associate consultant with Capco. I also graduated last May, and I'm super here to be with everyone and answer whatever questions you guys have. I know what it's like to be in school still and going through the recruiting process, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope we can make it a little less stressful and more enjoyable for everyone here.
Cool, thank you all. Can you each of you talk about what is the best piece of advice that you could give to someone that's transferring into the professional workforce right now?
The one piece of advice that I received and that I try to tell everyone is just to believe in yourself. Super cliche, but like when you go through career fairs and you're applying to jobs and things like that, it's really nerve-wracking because you're standing in a line of 15, 20 people at career fairs. They might be virtual now, but you're like, wow, this person has the same qualifications I do. Like, why would they want me, or any of that? And I think it's really important to have confidence in yourself. And at the end of the day, you're selling yourself, right? So companies aren't looking for experience at y'all's age. It's more of the potential that you have. They can see your work ethic through your resume, the way you talk about yourself. And I think it's really important always to just be confident in yourself, and I think that'll end up being the best for you.
Yeah, and I'll jump off of that. I think one piece of advice that I got is just be grateful. Be grateful for any opportunity that you get. If it's an interview, if it's an informational interview, if it's just an email back, just be as gracious and humble as you can. And I think that'll really set you apart. Always follow up with people. Don't ever leave anything on the table. So that's my best piece of advice.
And then just to kind of double down on as well, just really like staying open to different types of possibilities. Sometimes we have like this grand vision in place, and sometimes we just need to stay open to like other people's feedback or ideas or just things that might come our way. And so, yeah, I think that in this changing environment with everything, we can always just stay open and be positive.
So a question came in: what is the favorite thing about working in your field? So whether it be HR or the other fields that you all are in.
I'll say for my favorite thing, I'll talk about my job and my role specifically. One thing that I really love about it is that I have a pretty big impact, I feel, on our local Houston economy. My bank in middle market specifically helps a lot of small businesses, businesses under 500 million in revenue, get banking products and services that they need in order to operate. And for me, that gives me a really good feeling of that I'm doing something for our community, our economy, especially with the Paycheck Protection Program that you guys probably might have heard about once or twice. We had a pretty big impact in that. So I really like the feeling of giving back as it is. I have my little rescue dog right here, right next to me, but I always like giving back and volunteering and my job kind of lets me do that in a way.
My personal favorite thing that I really love about what I get to do on a daily basis is really making sure that I get to have an impact on people's lives. So from both like the employee perspective, like connecting them to resources, especially during this difficult time. So whether it's a leave of absence or getting in touch with a doctor or literally like a lot of different types of things. But also making sure that like we're creating the right experiences for our customers. And in every role we go into, whether it's retail or not, human resources or not, we're always providing a service to another person. And so just making sure that I get to have an impact on like the experience of so many people's lives, especially during such a trying time, whether it's like finances or personal safety or health.
And to go off that, mine's a little bit different, but being in consulting and tech consulting especially, I really feel like I'm challenged like every single day. I've been on multiple projects so far within the last year, and it's like you go to different clients, you have to learn a whole different industry, you have to work with subject matter experts that have been there for 15, 20 years, and they know the ins and outs. And no matter when you start, like that first week or two, you really have to there's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of learning that has to be done. So I love the challenges that come with different projects, different clients. There's always different types of people to work with. So I really enjoy it because it keeps you on your toes. Like there's never a dull moment in consulting, really, especially with the way I've done things and the projects that I've been on.
One of the questions that just came in, can you talk a little bit about what your biggest takeaways were from your time at Bauer? What are some things that you think would be good advice for students to be involved in, or things that have helped you from your time at UH?
I was just going to say, I'd say take advantage of everything. One of the biggest classes we were talking about right before you guys joined was the Gen B class, which might be a little different this year, but take advantage of everything that they recommend, everything they tell you to do. The Rockwell Career Center, for me, it was a huge resource. I joined one of the student orgs that had mock interviews, resume prep. I was a transfer student, I didn't mention that, but I transferred from a local community college, and I had no idea what I was doing when I got here, because for some reason community college doesn't tell you that internships are a thing. So I kind of just hit the ground running and took advantage of literally every single resource. I went to every single fair, everything that was offered, which got me in front of recruiters' faces more touch points, and ultimately I think got me at least comfortable with where I could interview with Chase and be where I am.
And I agree. I was going to say kind of the same thing. Just use your resources that UH gives you. I feel like what UH gives us, like Bauer especially, has so many resources, whether they're clubs specific to your major or, the Rockwell Career Center. I think those are the two resources I leverage the most. I'm an MIS major, so I use MISO, whether they had coding time or, their resume workshops, and then most importantly, the career fairs and professional meetings. So I attended, the career fairs and professional meetings as often as I could. And ultimately that landed me my internships and my jobs, which obviously are huge.
I think the biggest takeaway is just get involved in the best way that fits your schedule. Definitely don't feel like the need to overstretch yourself, but try and get involved as much as you possibly can. It really does go a long way, especially if you don't have prior work experience or if you're a transfer student. So there's so many different organizations at Bauer, and there's so many different organizations at UH. There's going to be an opportunity that fits your lifestyle and the things that interest you and your plans for the future.
One of the students that's here asked, what challenges have you guys faced as recent graduates, whether that be transitioning into your jobs or just as time as a newer, younger employee?
For me personally, going into a environment where there were a lot of other highly experienced individuals who knew what to do, but also being expected to have really strong answers and be able to support people initially. I definitely struggled with imposter syndrome and gaining that confidence and really feeling confident in like what I do know and how to get answers for other people who were needing help. But I definitely like know that that's a common theme throughout a lot of young professionals. And for those of you guys that are entering the workforce, it's totally normal to like feel that sort of way, but definitely like take partners with the people that you work with, build those relationships. And at the end of the day, like a lot of the things are going to be an open book test. So just know what resources you have and really dig into them.
For me, I started my job full-time this past February. So I started right before the world blew up and everything. And I'd echo what Serena said. I struggled with, you know, kind of getting that confidence and gaining my footing, and then kind of being told to work from home very soon after. So it's been challenging, but I would say just kind of keep a good mindset about it, you know, as you start to learn from home at UH and transition to online classes. I would, you know, definitely recommend setting a schedule and being a good time manager. So it's a couple things that I've learned from it, but it is challenging, and, you know, transitioning to the workforce is hard in any capacity. You know, transitioning while working from home and not being in front of people is just an added challenge, but it keeps it interesting.
Can each of you talk a little bit about what your path was into the roles that you have now, whether that be internships or what the interview process looked like, or just any interesting kind of twists and turns that got you to the positions you're in now?
I got my job through Gen B in a way. So when I was in Gen B, we had like a group project, like our semester long project, and I was on an Enactus project, and that really introduced me to the entire student org as a whole. And through those experiences, I was able to meet some really great recruiters from Target, and from like my conversations with them and the things that I was involved with during my time in Enactus, they told me a lot about like the internship program with Target. And my junior year, I interned for Target, really fell in love with like the company culture and what we do here for our teams and for our guests. And then when my internship ended, I was offered a full-time position with Target, and I was just really excited to join the team post-graduation. So while my like overall story was pretty linear, it really like came down to just like building really great networking relationships and continuing to like be involved in a way that allows yourself to grow, even if you might have like an initial step foot plan, and really just have like different individuals involved to give you like feedback and insight on what those different paths could look like for you. So during my time at Bauer, I spent a lot of time at the RCC and like utilizing the career counselors to see like what kind of different paths could be as an option for me if I were to enter my career with Target.
Yeah, and mine was a little bit different than that. I worked at Apple like in my sophomore year of college, and I got that through Bauer Career Gateway. And from there, once that finished up, I really wanted an internship in the IT field. And so I literally applied, I think, like 200 positions, 200 internships on the Bauer Gateway. I remember using LinkedIn as well and Indeed and everything. And so anyways, I got my first internship from Bauer Gateway. That they were specifically wanting someone with that wanted to get in the IT field, and the interview process on that was intimidating, but you know, that's what pretty much all the interviews are like, you know, about your experience, and it's really nerve-wracking. But after that, I also got my second internship through Bauer Gateway, so I highly recommend for everyone to use it. I got super lucky on there, and then after that, for a full-time position, I used MISO a lot. I went to their professional meetings and their career fairs, and they helped with the interview process. They helped, you know, get your face in front of important recruiters at these different companies.
And I'll talk a little bit about my experience. So to echo Sahel's, I used Bauer Career Gateway as well. I don't know if they still do this or not, but whenever I was applying for my first internship with Chase, they listed like who the recruiter was. Kind of, it was like off on like a little, I think it's like a column or something. They had the recruiter's name for the position I was applying for. So connected with her on LinkedIn, sent her an email expressing, what I was interested in, what I thought I was interested in. I was able to connect with her that way. Got an interview in Dallas. That was where my first internship was. Got an interview, ended up liking me, and I interned with them for the summer of 2018. But I ultimately decided when I was there that bank operations wasn't something that I ultimately saw for myself. So while I was there, took advantage of every resource that JP Morgan Chase offers and, joined our employee resource groups, networked with other people at the bank, just talk to people. One of the biggest pieces of advice I'll give you guys, just talk to people, ask what they do, see if it's something that you think you may or may not like, and be honest if, ultimately you decide, maybe I don't want to do banking, it's not really for me. I most likely will have connections elsewhere. I did learn that too. So I just networked with a lot of people at the bank, ended up meeting a lot of people within our commercial bank and middle market, and then worked my way down to the Houston office because I wanted to be home. Houston's home for me. So ended up networking with the middle market office in Houston and received an offer to come back and intern a second time here in Houston. I did that, loved it, enjoyed it, and ended up doing well enough to get a full-time offer, and that's how I'm here.
So I know the answer usually to this question is every day different, but can you talk about what kind of every day at your job would look like? And is there ways that has changed with COVID and everything that's going on right now? Maybe I'll focus on that, kind of how your job has changed with the circumstances we're in at the moment.
Yeah, I'll chime in. My day-to-day, so I'm in the middle market. I'm part of a rotational analyst program. We support our relationship management team, treasury management, and credit underwriting teams. So relationship management's kind of front office sales roles. Treasury management is kind of like cash management. I always kind of relate it to like, think about your accounts at a bank, credit card, checking, savings, but like for a business. That's really simplistic, but that's just like the gist. And then credit underwriting is kind of looking at like a company's financials to make a decision. It's kind of like you're giving a company a credit score. Again, way overly simplistic, but that's the gist. So I support them with any kind of day-to-day needs they need. If they need financials looked at, if they need, an account analysis statement for a client and things like that. So I'll do kind of that kind of stuff. But with COVID, I'm gonna plug the Paycheck Protection Program, but that's kind of been our biggest focus right now, is helping businesses and clients get funding they need to keep people on the payroll. So we processed, I want to say JP Morgan processed about 14 million in loans, and maybe I'm off, but I think it's 14 million. Don't quote me on that. Getting money into the hands of the business owners that need it, for the sake of the economy. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And now, lesser known, the Main Street Lending Program is kicking off. So getting ready for that and gearing up.
And for me, the difference is that you have a bed at your house, and that is very, very tempting to work from. That is my only difference, and it's a very dangerous game to play, and I would highly recommend you stay away from it. And that's going to be my answer.
I recommend that too. That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah.
I like that. Avoid the bed. That's gonna be
avoid the temptation.
That's gonna be the takeaway for this entire webinar. Don't work from the bed.
For me personally, I'm still working in in the store, so I'm still going to work every day. I don't work remotely, but my day-to-day has changed in the sense that whereas I might have gone 2 or 3 days without talking to an employee, I'm now checking in with every single person in my building every single day, whether they're in the building or not, to see if they and their families are doing well. and really just driving home like the messages of like safety, health, wellness, not just to like our employees, but also everyone else that we interact with. So that's how I've been spending a lot of my time, and also just connecting individuals to resources as they need them through the pandemic.
This is actually a really good question to follow up with that on. So how have each of you avoided procrastination while in the office at first, either before COVID or even now? Like, how do you avoid procrastination when you're at home, or it's hard to maybe a little bit harder to be self-motivated?
So while I was in the office, anytime I'd feel like, you kind of get to that point of working where you're like, okay, your brain is kind of mush. Anytime, what I do is I just take a walk, or I'll go get like a cup of coffee or something. And I think that really helps like reset your mind. And then, you can get a cup of coffee and you'll see someone in the kitchen or something, and you'll at least get to talk to them for a few minutes. And I feel like that really helps you, like I said, reset, and you come back to your desk a little fresher, and then you look at the clock and hopefully it's closer to time to go home. But at home, it's a little bit different, because obviously you don't have that luxury of talking to people. So I think it's a little harder to stay engaged. I think I can speak for everyone for that. I love what I do and I really enjoy working, but sometimes, working from home can get a little, like if you live alone, or you have a roommate or something, it can get a little lonely, or it can get a little boring and easier to slack off. But I think it's just important to try to keep yourself engaged, eat a snack or drink a coffee or something, just to have a break every few minutes, or, just to try to keep yourself engaged.
Yeah, no, I echo the same. I would do the same thing whenever I was in the office. I, was feeling a little, get that 2:30 drag, you would go downstairs. At least for me, my office is downtown, and we have all those. I'd go either walk the tunnels or grab coffee or something. I would do that, but kind of similar here at home. I think it's good to take brain breaks. For me, I started a garden during quarantine, so I'll go outside with my dogs and look at our garden, see what's not growing. But but taking little breaks for yourself. When it wasn't so hot, I would go and walk around the block with my dog. But I don't think that's vastly different from going downstairs or going wherever and grabbing coffee whenever you're in the office. So.
A question that came in, I think it's a good thing to hear from you all, because I know it's something that kind of potentially can be handled differently in different places. How do each of you handle workplace conflict, or maybe if you also want to talk about how you handle workplace stress?
I think Serena's got this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, she can handle this one.
You're the HR person and talk all about conflict.
Yeah. So, first of all, conflict is totally normal. We're all human. We all have the right to our own perspectives and opinions. And when you work in any sort of environment, you're going to be working with people who have different opinions than you and different perspectives than you. And that's totally normal. And it's actually a really, really good thing. However, when it goes into an unhealthy conflict, first of all, I definitely recommend that you have a conversation with the individual and just be hey, can we slow down? But there's a really great book called Crucial Conversations. If you haven't given it a read, I definitely recommend it. But more than that, it's really about understanding where your perspective is coming from, but really trying your absolute hardest to understand the perspective of someone that you're struggling to get along with, or maybe having an issue of conflict with in that moment. And it's appropriate to take a step back, maybe go for a walk, get a cup of coffee, just excuse yourself for a minute. But it's really important to revisit the issue and make sure that you get clarity on what that next step looks like, so you can still move forward as a team. If you're unable to do that at a long-term basis, or you're realizing, hey, this person is really difficult for me to work with, or every time I show an idea or give some feedback, I'm met with a brick wall, I definitely recommend that you take partners with other coworkers, or even your managers or human resources. Definitely a really great option. And just kind of walk through with them, hey, this is like something that I'm struggling with. Like, do you have any feedback on how I could improve my communication or better understand like what their perspective is, or do you have any insight? And if it continues escalating, you definitely want to involve like your manager and HR, especially because it can create like an unhealthy work environment for yourself. It's definitely appropriate to like slow down and take a step back, but circle back.
I haven't had any workplace conflict, knock on wood, yet. I don't know, but I can speak to workplace stress. There have been times where like on my projects where it gets down to crunch time and there's really nothing you can do. Things need to be done, and they can't do certain things at the beginning of a project. It kind of all has to happen at the end, especially with software and things like that. So what I would say is just try to have a balance, and try to go, when you go home, just try to really, like take your mind off of work, even if you get home at 8 p.m. I think it's really important to kind of just disconnect from work at some point of the night. Just put your phone away, put your laptop away, and just kind of have some time to yourself, whether it's watching TV or reading a book or anything. I think that's really, really important. And then to know in the back of your mind that, after it's all, like, typically the stressful days at work are finite. They're not going to be there the whole time. So, after a while, it's going to go back to normal. And sometimes that's where I find my motivation is that, it's this time it's going to have a great outcome once you reap your rewards and you see like the project is done correctly, everything is done, everyone is happy. And at the end of the day, things will go back to normal, and the stress will go back down.
So speaking as the MIS professional, what would you say is any knowledge that you'd recommend someone seeking outside of the standard curriculum for someone going into MIS?
So what I would recommend is I would go, it depends what exactly you want to do, right? So there's a lot of learning materials out there, and I would probably go get certified in something. Like one of the huge things right now is Salesforce. So you can go on their trailheads on their website and do a bunch of trainings and get certified. And I think that would help you understand, the basics of how a big software like that works and all the different plugins and everything that they have, right? And I think that would be a good stepping stone into what the real world is like and the softwares that you would see in a full-time position or in your internship. And I think it looks great on your resume. And when you're interviewing with the company, you can say, hey, not only do I have my schoolwork and my academics, you can say, hey, I put in effort, I put in X amount of hours outside of school, and I got certified in, Salesforce. Or if you want to be a business analyst, I took a business analysis course. And I think that would be really helpful and help you in the long run.
Ryan, so specifically, someone asked, as a transfer student, how did you get started at Bauer? What were the resources that you used the most, and where would be a good place to start for a transfer student that wants to make the best of their experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I started with the, what was it called? The Transfer Connection, I think is what it was called. It's like an event that they have on campus that kind of it's exactly how it sounds. Gets all the transfer students together, gives them an overview of resources that Bauer has to offer. What I did specifically, one of the things I recommended in that kind of connection fair was get involved with student orgs. I know it's been mentioned on here a couple of times. Get involved with student orgs, and I took that seriously. I reached out to the president at the time of the Hispanic Business Students Association and told him what my situation was and basically pled for help. And he pretty much took me under his wing, offered me, his guidance, his network, and he was committed to helping me succeed. And he, ultimately pushed me to go to career fairs, go to recruiting mixers, go to information sessions, which again I did. I took all of those resources and I did. It's funny. I don't have it now, but my first resume, I think about it now, it was literally everything you could do wrong on a resume. I'm pretty sure the Rockwell Career Center looked at it and was just like, oh, this one's going on the wall of fame, because I had colors, my font was different, it was too big, it went on 2 pages. awful. And and look at me now. So, I mean, you can do it, but so I'd recommend taking advantage of every resource. Resume ER was one of the ones I did. And then just don't be scared to jump in and go head first at something, being a transfer student, I'll say this again, but I didn't know how far behind I felt until I got to Bauer, which looking back on it, I don't think I was as far back as I thought I was. But if you set your mind to doing something, and you kind of help yourself get there, others around you will help too. So take advantage of everything.
Awesome, thank you. So Serena, how did you set yourself apart during the application process with Target, during the internships there, and presumably that's what kind of helped get a role there. So what, you talked about your path a little bit there, but what would be some advice to set yourself apart?
Yeah, no, definitely. So both like in terms of getting the initial interview and like getting the internship to begin with, just really getting heavily involved with different student orgs. So my personal like passion and like what I like to do is really like developing other leaders. And so I was able to get some pretty concrete examples and experience through my experience with Enactus. But the foundation of that is really just communication skills. So you can learn that in any sort of organization or any group project. So definitely just sharing those experiences with the initial recruiters was definitely beneficial. And then through the internship process, just really staying open and being bold with every situation. So like asking a lot of questions and really building relationships with the people that I was working with, whether it was like the 2 managers up or the employees that I was overseeing for the day, like really having strong foundational relationships. Businesses are relationship based. So when we have really great communication skills and strong foundational relationships, we can do a lot. And so just kind of like using those relationships and just showing like, hey, I can move these metrics based on the relationships that I have and based on the development time that I'm investing in this person or this project. And so that was able to set me apart. But that's like, regardless of industry, like making like really great relationships, asking open-ended questions, like no question is a silly question, like every question deserves a really strong answer. And then just making sure like to follow up and be open to like whatever other projects or tasks they might have that they maybe not initially communicated. So,
and I'll just try to answer on that, but I'll echo the same thing. I would say while you're at Bauer, just try and make connections, not try and make as many connections as possible, but try and make connections with your peers, with, recruiters, with, people who may be lower on the totem pole at companies that you're seeking, so you can get, a real idea of what you may be interested in and want to do.
And if I can chime in, something that I remember helping me a lot was take advantage of your professors as well. Your professors, while they are your teachers and they also have vast experience in the industry. And so like I remember Dr. Skinner, I had a couple of offers on the table and I went and asked him, I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And he asked me a couple of questions and was like, hey, what do you want to do? What's your end goal? And once I told him, a little bit about my life, he really took an interest. He sat me down and we talked about it for a while. And he was like, hey, based on that, this is what I think you should do. And it gave me a whole new perspective, right? These people have experience, for 20 plus years as executives for companies and things like that. So it's a huge help, and definitely your professors are humans too. So I would definitely use them.
Awesome. Yeah, I really think that's really great advice. Something you all mentioned a little bit, but can you go a little bit more in depth of what your interview process looked like for your position at your specific company that you have right now? And maybe just in general, what is some advice that you have with interviewing?
So for my current role, I went through 6 rounds of interviews, and they were all situationally based outcome questions, so like the SBO model or the STAR method. And so what really helped me was looking on like what the previous interviews or previous candidates had shared about the application process, but really getting insight from Bauer Rockwell Career Center on what those questions could look like, doing mock interviews, but having like a story to tell during the process. So if someone's asking you a question about how a situation went, like you can have a really great answer to that, but it does take a little bit of prep, but you have some really great resources at the RCC to help build those stories with you. So yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoyed this question. I feel like my interview for my current position at Capco was super cool, very nerve wracking, but it was great in the end, right? I got the email that I got the interview, and so they told me, first come first serve. We're interviewing from 8:30 to 5, and I was thinking, and I put myself in the interviewer's shoes, and I was like, obviously you're going to interview like 10 people that day. What's like who would stick out? I think it would be either the first person or the last person of the day, right? Everyone in between is your brain is kind of mush, right? So I was like, let me, take a shot in the dark and let me interview at 8:30 a.m. So I came in there, I was early, and he noticed that, and he was like, wow, like, the first one, you're so like uppity first thing in the morning. And I just tried really hard to be like, super positive and just make myself stick out. I think you really have to tell a story or do something that stuck out. And so we had a great interview. It was like a 30-minute long interview. He asked me behavioral questions. And afterwards I was like, hey, I sent him a follow-up email, which is crucial. And I was like, he told me that he rollerbladed in his free time. And in the email after, I was like, hey, it was great talking to you today. By the way, I hope you enjoy roller skating, not knowing that there was a difference. So he emailed me back and he started laughing and he was like, I rollerblade, I don't roller skate. There's a huge difference. And, because of that, we're not going to be able to hire you. And he started laughing. So I thought that was really funny. So obviously, that's something to remember me by. And then I got the call that I got to the second round of interviews. And that was before the second round of interviews, the night before, there was a dinner. And so that was definitely like my first time going to a dinner. And there was like 8 candidates and like 6 high up, partners or principals at the company, which was, really, you're like a college student, like, well, what am I doing here with these guys? And so it was really funny that, I had these people sitting next to me. And so they were like, what do you do in your free time? I was like, oh, I'm really into like, cars and race cars and all that. And one of the ladies was like, oh, our HR manager, her husband's like a semi-professional race car driver. And I noticed from the last name that I knew exactly who he was because he's like pretty famous. And so they're like, oh, wow. And so like the next day when I went in for the interview, we talked for a while. And that was another thing that they remembered me by. And it shows that you have like a personality side. It's not always just academics or strictly work. And then in that office visit, there was 8 candidates again. And we had an interview from 8:30 a.m. to like 11 a.m. with like 4 different people. And then we had lunch and then they let us go. And so I think typically for full-time positions, the interview can be pretty rigorous. You're not just interviewing with one person. You're interviewing with, 3 or 4 people that are high up, and they'll ask you behavioral questions, technical questions, things like that. So that was kind of long. I apologize.
I'll chime in and be quick on mine. My first interview experience with Chase was honestly pretty fun. I got to fly to Dallas and go to the office and visit. One of the things I thought was fun and interesting about like what Chase did, they obviously told me all about Chase and the company and the position and everything like that, and the kind of the front half of the day. But intermittently, we would stop and like play these like brain games, is the best way I can describe it. And even now in the recruiting process, they have like an assessment that you take that's pretty much just all brain games. I feel like a lot of the times when I get questions from students, it's, what technical skills do I need or what can I focus on that would, put me in a better position technically. And a lot of what Chase does, honestly, is wanting to know the way you think. how do you think about XYZ situation? How do you think through things that aren't necessarily directly related to your job? So we would play these games that would, be brain teasers and try to figure out how do you think and problem solve, but that's not, financial, I guess is the best way to describe it. So a lot of games and that was fun. And then kind of in the latter half of the day of my interview, we had a lunch and senior partners would come and join us and talk to us too. But, we had interviews that were a couple behavioral questions, but honestly, nothing too technical. People weren't, at least in my field in finance, banking, they weren't too focused on that. For my role, it was more of, have you had accounting classes? And, that was pretty much the extent of the technical questions you were asked. But they just really focus on wanting to get to know you. A lot of what I do is client focused, client facing work. So we go in front of, our clients, talk to them about their business a lot. So having good communication, interpersonal skills, being able to be somebody that you want to be around for, if you're going to be in a car for an hour going to a client site, is important to see too. So that's a little bit about how my experience went with them.
Cool, thank you. Those are all.
I can chime in with one more thing. I promise I'll be quick. Actually, 2 bits of advice that I think are, if you take nothing else away from what I've said all day, please take this. When you're interviewing, I think it's really important to know like buzzwords of the industry. So know the background of your company, what they do, maybe some of their clients or whatever you can find on their website. And then that leads me into the second thing, research the company before you interview with them. You do not want to go in not knowing anything about the company. Know when they were founded, know where their headquarters are, know how many employees they have, know maybe like 3 to 5 small facts about them. And, bring it in your conversation to make them think, wow, this person really took the time and effort to research our company and they really want to work for us.
So one of the things that I know we talk about that's important in our office is networking. Is networking actually important? And if so, what advice do you have for students to build a network effectively?
Yeah, I'll chime in on this because, yes, networking is very important. That's how I got all of my jobs. And I'll reiterate this again, talk to people. See if it's something you want to do, see if you're interested. Because one of the things and one of my strategies during my first internship with Chase to get my second internship was, I networked with people. I talked to one person who had introduced me to 3 other people. Those 3 people then introduced me to 3 other people that I should talk to. And that's how you grow a network. And it does start with a, kind of, I guess, cold call, email. But, if you meet somebody at a recruiting event that you've already met and you send them an email and say, hey, I'm interested. Would you have anybody else like you could recommend me talking to? That would be good if I'm interested in XYZ role. More likely than not, they'll be like, yeah, you should talk to this person. And then that was one thing I always did. I asked, I'm interested in this. Do you have anyone else you think would be great to talk to on this subject? And they'd say, oh yeah, talk to this person. And that's how I grew my network. So yeah, it's very important. And I will add, because I didn't add this before, when it comes to LinkedIn, 1, be thoughtful about what you share. But 2, if you're going to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, always send a note. I didn't realize how important this was until I'm on this side of things. I think I have like 20 or 30 connections sitting in my queue right now that I don't know who they are. I don't know if I've ever met them, to be honest, but they never send a note. So I don't know, they're just sitting there. So that's just my personal thing. I'm fine if you guys add me on LinkedIn, I'll throw that out there too. But please make sure you send a note on how you met them or, who you know them for, or what you're hoping to get out of the connection. So.
I really agree with what you said there. And I think networking is huge, especially before you graduate, because you're not expected to have the technical skills or, have a lot of experience as you graduate. But I think, the people that and the way you talk to people is really, really important. And I also think that as you go on, it's important to keep up with your network. And I've seen at big companies where if you, word of mouth is imperative. If you know someone and they recommend you for an interview, they will bring you in and, put you at the top of the leaderboard versus all the other candidates just because of that word of mouth. And I've seen people get hired, with lesser experience because of their word of mouth and because they had someone refer them at the company. So it's important to keep up with your network. And whenever you do reach out to people and you want to network for the first time, don't just add them and be like, hey, can you get me a job? Like I get that all the time. It's, hey, can you refer me for this role? And it's just like, I don't know you, maybe you should, there's a way to go about things. You're not, networking is like a two-way street. You don't want to just go in and ask for something when you're like, you don't know them and you're just random. So I think it's really important the way you go about things and to talk to people and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, and maybe set up a call, talk to them, get to know them, and then at the end say, hey, maybe if you can refer me to this position, I think I'd be a great fit.
I totally agree.
I completely agree too. Informational interviews go a really long way. So if you're like seeing a role or someone on LinkedIn that you think is like, wow, I want to be that person in 5 years, definitely reach out to them and like share with them, like use the college card. Like you are a student, use that card as much as you can and get an informational interview set up and just kind of build that network that way. Most people are willing to help you if you just ask for it.
Thank you for repeating a lot of the things that we say in our appointments, but when you all say it, it definitely backs it up even stronger. When people in the field say it as well. All that stuff I think was great advice. Can you all speak about the importance of speaking of informational interviewing and networking, the importance of mentors? Do any of you or each of you have a mentor? And what do you think is important about having someone like that in your professional career?
So I had a phenomenal mentor when I was at UH, and she just continued to give me insight and feedback and a lot of support as I was going through my classes and student orgs and interview processes. So I definitely recommend having a mentor at the collegiate level, not just in the professional level, just because they can provide a lot of insight. And then at the professional level, I definitely recommend just building relationships and asking people for help. It's definitely okay to just be like, hey, like, I have a question about this, or I'm personally working on this part of my role, and I see that you're really great at that. Could we grab coffee, or can I schedule a 15-minute like chat with you just to get like your advice on how you do those things, or can you kind of walk me through what that process looks like? And that's like the really like basics of having a mentor, but they're really there for you to kind of just get insight and feedback and understand a perspective that you might not have yet just because of your limited experience. But through mentors, you can definitely get to the place where you are hoping to be. Yeah.
I think for me, I'll look at similar, but I do want to make one distinction that mentors are great and sponsors are great too. I've had a lot of mentors a lot of my mentorships have been very forward. They've kind of changed as my role has changed, my career path has kind of changed, but they've always kind of stayed as a sponsor. So I know a couple people at different banks, different businesses that I've kept in touch with, but I wouldn't consider in any sort of mentoring capacity, but may have been mentors previously or in a previous life. But I do think mentors are very crucial for your growth and whatnot. But I would say if you're a mentee to somebody, just be cognizant of your mentor's time. But yeah, I think it's very important to have too.
Yeah, I agree. I think mentors are super important to have. Like, for example, I kept up with my boss at my second internship, and we've been pretty close ever since. And he's one of those people that he has like a crazy personality. The way he came up and the way, when he went through school, what he did was a little bit different than how I did it and how I envisioned my life. But the lessons he learned and what he recommends is super, super important. And so I'll reach out to him and we'll have lunch once every 3 to 4 months. and we'll just update each other on our lives. And when I was in college and I was choosing to stay at that company, or I had a couple other offers on the table, and I went to him and I was like, hey, like, we have a relationship that goes past just work, and what would you do if you were in my position? And he asked me a few questions again, and he was like, this is what I would do. He's like, I want to make sure you get what's best for you, not just what's good for like my company, if you stay here or not. And I think that's huge, that even if they work at a company that you may have worked at in the past, they're going to be there as a human most of the time. So just be careful to pick the right mentor, though.
So as we're getting closer to the end, I had a couple questions that I just wanted to see what kind of advice that you all had. What is something that you wish you would have known before you started your professional career? When you look back, you're like, it would have really helped for me to know that before I got started.
It doesn't really pertain to like the job hunt or anything, but just enjoy college. I know when I was in college, I was so ready to graduate and be ready to have that piece of paper and be done with everything, but really enjoy your time there. I promise you're going to cherish those 11 a.m. classes and those afternoon classes and those days that you only had 1 or 2 classes on campus. If you're a commuter like me, I really miss those days, and hanging out with my friends in the library, or having friends to hang out with. But because now when you're working 8 to 5, it's like that's pretty much your whole day, and it's not nearly as fun, I promise.
Just don't feel like you have to live up to like anybody else's expectations, if that makes sense. You do you figure out what's best for you. Don't feel pressured to go into one industry versus the other because that's what your friends are doing. Just talk to people and find what you ultimately think that you'll like and you'll enjoy. And yeah.
Usually when we end our sessions, I've asked the same question at the end of each of these. Can each of you give one piece of advice that you would give to students who are job searching during this time, whether it be given the challenging the job market, or just what is a piece of advice that you want to give to students as like a parting thought?
I'll kind of reiterate a point that Sahel mentioned earlier, but do your research, stay up to date on the news. There's a lot of it going on right now. And I think that if, you do, not to put oil and gas under the bus, but if you want to do oil and gas, maybe start thinking of other options. But just kind of stay up in the news, know what you're getting into, have really good talking points if, you do decide to talk to somebody at a company. And then just, again, don't be afraid. I know it's really intimidating to kind of get started and get going and trying to figure out a path. But no one's path is the same, and you can do whatever you want. And I promise you're probably not going to make any huge missteps because Bauer's not going to let you do that. So, yeah.
And if I could give one piece of advice, preparation is key. Hard work is key. No matter what you do, if you want to be successful, there's no shortcut. You got to work hard. You got to be dedicated. And then one thing I noticed is that whenever you go to career fairs and things like that, obviously you want to work at the EYs and you want to work at the PwCs or the Chevrons or the Phillips 66 or the Chases, right? Or the Targets, like the big companies. And sometimes it's not like that may not be your first gig. You may have to work your way up, at smaller companies and then work your way up if that's your end goal, right? And so there's no harm in that. There's nothing bad about that. Everyone's path is different. So even though your expectations may be high and you may have to go to a different job, just know that there's always, you're not stuck there forever. You can always work your way up. And if you want to get to that company at the end, it's still a great option. And it doesn't matter if you do it in your first year, your 5th year, your 10th year. Everyone's path is different. So I think comparison is a thief of joy. You see your friends working at these big companies, and I know you see on LinkedIn, and it's just kind of like, oh, dang, I wish I could do that too, but it's no big deal.
If I were to give you guys a tiny piece of advice, it would just be continue to stay resilient in these very difficult and challenging times. be resilient with continuing to submit applications and partnering up with different people on LinkedIn. And like, as you guys probably already know, like, you're not going to be getting every single job or every single interview, and that's okay. Like, that's totally okay. Usually it's like the better fit for you in the long run, but sometimes it takes a minute to see that and have that perspective. But just stay resilient and have like that end goal in mind of, hey, this is something I want to look forward to, and here are the options that I can help get me there. And just put in the work every day and just continue having that really, really positive mindset, because it's easy to get to that point of, okay, well, maybe I just need to change my dream or change what I want to be doing completely. And don't beat yourself up, because your path is your path, and just continue to stay resilient to the course you're trying to chart.
Awesome. One more huge thank you to our alumni that joined us today, and we will see everyone next week. Thank you.